I'm your host, Dr. Desiree Beekharry, but you will get to know me as Desiree. We'll embark on a journey of self-discovery, uncovering the masks that hold us back and embracing our true selves. With empathy, vulnerability, and willingness to learn, we'll navigate the challenges of leadership and personal growth. We'll share inspiring stories. I'm the founder of Manage the Conflict, and I live here in Adelaide with my family, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
So we can tell from your accent and my accent as well that we are not originally from Adelaide. So where were you originally
from? From London and from Essex. I did a good part of my studies in Essex, and before that, my family, my parents and that are from Mauritius, so they migrated over. I grew up in the UK, and here I am in Australia after a very nomadic lifestyle.
So how long has Australia been home for you?
17 years this May.
Gosh, 17 years.
Yeah.
I think I'm 13 soon. I'm looking for something.
Yeah. 13 can be a very good number. I love 13. My brother got his license to live on the 13th day of November, so I think this became my lucky number.
Good way to look at it.
Yeah.
So tell me, how long have you actually been running your company for, Desiree?
Officially, I got my ABN in July of 2021, like 2020. But I officially launched in 2021, October 2021. Before that, it was doing all the paperwork and all the admin stuff.
The administrative stuff.
Yeah, and learning about how to start a business and what business was I going to be in, etc., etc. COVID gave me a very good reason to launch my very first business. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So can I ask, we introduced you. You were very humble at the start of this podcast and introduced yourself as Desiree Beekharry.
Yes.
But however, there's a doctor in front of that. So would you like to expand a little bit more on?
Hey, look, I am educated. Obviously, I have got a doctorate. And I only got it because I was working in the disaster management field with a lot of high-level researchers, professors, lots of titled university people doing high-level research for the Commonwealth, for government, Australian government, to keep Australians and New Zealand and the rest of the world safe from natural hazards. And then there was the other sector of all the uniformed people, emergency services sectors, military, police, and all of them, all the uniforms in that side. And aside from the fact that I am only 5'3.5", 3.5, that 0.5 makes a huge difference. Didn't get me into the military in the UK because I was not 5'4", but everyone else was way, way taller, especially when they stood there, legs apart, arms crossed in their uniform and their hats, whatnot. I felt ever so small. On top of that, because I did not have a title, I didn't have a voice. At least I felt I didn't. So all the other titled people, Professor X, Dr. Z, and etc., they all had a voice, and I had a lot to say, but I wouldn't be heard. So I basically did it so my voice could be heard. And once I got it, suddenly everybody stopped when I started talking because I had a voice again. So it was basically to prove a point that I could do it and I had a voice, and so I could be heard. They wouldn't listen otherwise. So it was pretty much that's the only reason why I got it. My doctorate is in project management anyway.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, that shouldn't be the reason why you have or get a voice. It's based on a qualification. It should not be that. You should be able to go into any room and have a voice.
It should. But look, let's not forget that all the services, especially the ones in uniform, they are predominantly male, and being a woman, there's still a huge gap between the genders. There's a big gender gap in the armed services and in anything in uniform, and while women still have brains, and I don't know if they realize that or not, and they're slowly starting to come around to the fact that we can think. they also have this command and control. That's how we've always done it. There's a very big culture behind that group.
Yeah.
And it's not a question of fault finding. It's a question is that's how they've always done it. That's how it's always been, and the culture is so. And
it's embedded, that culture.
It's embedded. It's there. It's there. It is. And let's not forget, I may have been feeling a little bit smaller than I actually was, and perhaps my perception of how I was seen was also a little bit warped. Maybe it was me who thought that without a title I wouldn't be heard. So if I think that, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's not always about what others do to us. It's also what we do to ourselves as well. So it's very important to recognize that much of the stuff that happens to us, there's always two sides to it, and we have to be ready to look at that. Whether we like it or not, what we see, we must be open to looking at both sides, otherwise we don't improve.
Yeah. So that actually brings me on to the name of your company, which you did include say before, which is
Manage the Conflict.
Manage the Conflict, which sort of feels like it could be a little bit of a natural segue into what we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
So why did that become a specialism for you?
Okay, why manage the conflict? I can't remember a time when I wasn't a foreigner in any country. It's like, even being in England, because of my colour, because of my hair, because of everything about me, I look foreign. It doesn't matter. I don't even have to open my mouth and I look foreign. And I have, like I said earlier on, lived a nomadic lifestyle. Therefore, everywhere I've been, whether they look at my colour or not, I've been a foreigner. And as someone who is not from that country, I've always had to keep reinventing myself, changing what I say, adapting to the culture, fitting into different places. And sometimes that meant that I was conflicted on the inside. And often when you're conflicted on the inside and you don't have the opportunity to show your real self, conflicts naturally follow on the outside. And it's not like you're trying to create conflicts, but because you're kind of tainted, because one's view of how they see the world is a little bit conflicted. So if that happens on the inside, it will naturally reflect on the outside. And I realized that conflict is not just something that happens when somebody meets the other. Conflict is when you have a need and that need is not met, whether I don't meet the need or someone else doesn't meet the need. So that's why I decided to launch into this again post-COVID.
Yeah. Okay. And that's quite interesting that you talk about the internal conflict as well as the external conflict.
Yes.
And a lot of people, sometimes I think conflict resolution can be a little bit overused as a word, and sometimes people have a perception of what conflict resolution is, which can cause conflict before it's even been resolved.
Yes, so, absolutely.
So it sounds like your experience living nomadically, being a foreigner, having that internal and external conflict has been one of the things that has driven you to want to live more authentically and to help others to live authentically. So can you just give us a little bit more about how that's developed into more of a structure for your business and how you are actually supporting others?
Okay, so my passion is to deal with conflict at physical level, at an emotional level, at mental level, and spiritual level, so that it's healthy all around. And I think it's important that leaders understand that if you haven't managed the conflict that's going on within you in the same way, how you will approach conflict will be very different. And my motivations for doing what I do is because I think each one of us has we have one shot at this life. We have one shot at making us happy. Making ourselves happy is not by making someone else happy. We can't make everyone happy. And I know it sounds that everybody knows that, but actually we spend a lot of time trying to make other people happy. And when we try to make other people happy, we find that there's always going to be a whole bunch of people who will make unhappy as well. Therefore, you have to look at what makes me happy. And the reason I went into this line is to make sure that each individual understands that when they understand who they are, what makes them happy, they will be able to then project that. And by projecting that, yes, some people will be unhappy, but they'll come along on the journey because they're getting the you in your full happiness. And if you're grounded and happy, then they will come along on the journey and they will see the same you all along, not a different you every time they meet you, depending on who's around. So that for me is the basis of why I created what I did.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think unconsciously, I mean, I know you use the word emotional intelligence, but people do have emotional intelligence, and they can really read when you're not being your authentic self.
yes,
And even though you're saying you're trying to be something to make somebody else happy, if it's not coming from you, then the other person picks up on that as well. And so you get further and further apart, really.
yes,
Which is interesting way to look at it, because you're actually trying to come at it from a good place, where it's actually working against you.
yeah, it's backfiring simply because it's very tiring trying to remember how you behave with different people and wanting so hard to fit in, whether it's professionally, whether it's with other people, in society, in a community, with a different group of people. And it's very hard and exhausting to keep up. And that's why I think most people are exhausted. They're not exhausted from work. They're not exhausted from, because let's face it, what job is really that exhausting? I know very few where people are literally working on a whip and getting you to. So exhaustion, I think we exhaust ourselves in trying to be so many different things so often. And actually it's us whipping ourselves.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And that's the exhaustion. It's the
mental weight of that is very hard.
Yes, totally. And this, as you said, the trying to live authentically, people will pick up. We're not quite sure who you are and what you're really all about, and therefore you still haven't helped yourself. You still haven't helped anyone. In fact, actually, it's all gone wrong. But no one's going to tell you that either.
So you're coming at this from all aspects. You talked about physical, mental, career, family, spiritual. So you're coming at it from all aspects of the life when you are working with your clients. Do you work with your clients on a one-to-one or in groups? Do you work corporately, personally?
Okay, so look, from what I do, I work mainly in groups when it talks about conflict management, and it's more about professional. But the way it works is this. I am a certified profiler, and I use DISC, driving forces, and emotional intelligence to first profile the individual. And once the individual has been profiled, while obviously profiling only covers these three layers of a person and what makes them unique in their way, thanks to that, they get a better understanding of who they are, what makes them tick, and what's their behavior like, and what drives them, and where they are on the emotional intelligence journey. Once we've done that, then we do what we consider to be what I've developed as the ACE principle. ACE is from Latin as, and that means unity, a unit. being one. And I work with groups, teams, so that they can become more coherent, more cohesive, more efficient, more effective, more dynamic, more productive, more of what they already are. If there are any miscommunications, if there are any challenges going on, or if they're aiming to get to a place but they need to be working like a well-oiled machine, it's a good way to start to get that team dynamics pumping. So the ACE principles, ACE is for A, authenticity, C for conflict, E for emotional intelligence. I developed that so that we can look at each level. Authenticity, they get to be their authentic self by looking at how best to communicate with one another. And that's where the profiling comes in, because you learn all about the communication styles. Conflict, what makes you conflicted? What are your triggers? How do you manage those triggers? How do you manage yourself? How do you, when you're being triggered? And we all know that conflicts would not be so bad if there wasn't a high level of emotions involved. And therefore we work hard on the emotional intelligence side, on looking at emotions, how to look at your own emotions, that's test your emotional temperature, how to regulate your emotions, but then how to be aware of the other's emotions and how to regulate that. And it's all about finding that motivation. So putting those together, you have the ACE principles. That's firing on all cylinders. And teams just love working like that because they come away with a map of in a way, a guiding principles on how they will go. They develop that and they keep working on it to become that team that they are aspiring to be in the future, which doesn't mean that there's a problem with the team right now necessarily.
But taking it to the next level.
It's taking that team to the next level. And the feedback I've heard them say to themselves, wouldn't it be great if we were the best functioning team? Wouldn't it be great if we had such a high level of psychosocial awareness and people would look at us? So they're motivated to be that team. And it takes all of them, and they develop that, and they go forward to be whatever it is that team's identity wants to be. Yeah.
How it's helping. There's a lot of self-awareness that's going to be coming from this, both self-awareness in yourself and awareness of others. From a future episode, how or what will the listener be taking away? What will be some of the things that, as a viewer or a listener to the podcast, that they can implement or take away into their own lives in any aspect, not just in the professional?
Look, all three of those, which I described from the profiling or from the ACE principle, is they will learn about how to best take the risk and be courageous about showing up as who they are. Often I feel that when we go to work or when we go to church, when we go to a community, when we go to a wedding, it's almost that you have to leave a part of you at the door and put on this face, put on this mask, put on this thing. You say mask, I say mask. It's all English, by the way.
I don't know how the Aussies say it. How would the Aussies say mask? They say mask.
I have no idea.
I reckon they go mask.
I have no idea, but it's just so funny. We both come from the same country and we both said scones and scones. Yes. Anyway, they have this mask they put on, and it's like, okay, let me show this face, let me show that face. And it shouldn't be that way. So the future, I'm thinking to have the courage, take the risk, to not leave anything at the door. Respectfully, be you, do you. That doesn't mean insulting anyone. That just means to be who you are and what you are, and take the risk. So I'm thinking in the future of talking about that risk taking, that behaving authentically, that whatever background you come from, because in our world now, diversity and inclusion is so strong, and it's being pushed, but it almost feels like it's a buzzword. It's a buzzword. We have a diversity and inclusion policy, we need to do this, but how many people feel included in what's going on, and how do you make people feel included in your culture, whatever that culture is, organizational, private, whatever. So it's all the discussions around those. How do leaders ensure that it's safe, and how do they better themselves? I mean, I've seen in organizations where directors and CEOs say, oh yes, we're having an unbiased conscious course, everyone has to attend. Everyone, not me. I'm the CEO, I don't attend. I'm the director, I don't attend. But
you've got to practice what you preach. It's got to come from the top down and the bottom up.
Exactly. And I say,
straight away.
It doesn't happen. And I say, well, where are you going to be? Are you coming? No, I'll do it on my desktop. But how do you hear what challenges are out there? Because that's the whole point, the discussion. That's when it gets rich. That's when it starts to live. And it's those buzzwords that they put out there. So the idea is, let's talk about this, and how do we make those leaders join the party and hear what others have to say. So I'd like to hear from why this is, why they think this is, and have those solid discussions about, diversity is big, diversity is that, but I know many people, for example, here in South Australia, in Adelaide, people from the northern suburbs. Last February, I did a workshop on authenticity, conflict, and emotional intelligence for Black women. Only 2 people registered for that because they're afraid. They don't know how to be really included. They feel they belong in the northern suburbs, and coming in too closer. There are many, many challenges. So I want to see, why is that? Why are they not? We talk diversity, we talk race, we talk inclusion, we talk all sorts of things, but I don't see it. It's not being practiced. So what I want to do is bring this to the table more and look at that a lot more.
And from your perspective, the listeners and viewers, they'll be able to access, provide comments, ask those questions that can be addressed in future episodes.
I'd like that to happen a lot more. I'd like people to tell me what it is that they're not seeing, what it is that they're being challenged with, what are the challenges they're seeing, why are things happening the way they are. We want to involve, but we also need the input. I realized when I launched that masterclass for Black women leaders that price was a problem, that Black women, especially here in South Australia, do not invest in themselves. They think they've got a degree, they've got a nursing degree, or they've got whatever degree. It's not that they're not educated, but that's enough.
It's not that lifelong learning.
It's not that lifelong learning. So it's about, what do you think is going to happen once you do that? If you want to move forward, the moving forward doesn't stop once the degree happens. Actually, that's when the learning truly begins, because you're practicing, you're getting the experience.
Yeah.
And it's not just for Black women, it's for everyone. Your learning theory ends when you get the degree, but your actual practice and your learning for life begins once you start choosing how you want and what you want to invest in. And in that investment is the part that makes you become, and the becoming is the important part. So I want those questions to come, and I want to understand why it's not happening here in South Australia and in other places in the world. I'm
sure this is not an isolated.
No, it's not.
This is
where we live at the moment, so that's what I'm dealing with. So, and let's hope whoever has questions will ask them. Yeah, definitely.
So it's interesting, a mask being at the door, even a location barrier. You talk about northern to there, and as you said before, and I don't necessarily want to repeat it as such, but sometimes that conflict is what you put on yourself and not necessarily what you may experience if you put yourself out there.
Yes.
And I appreciate that there's got to be that safety in you, which I think is quite a big part of wearing that mask. It's that safety or that protection that you have, and I sometimes think that comes internally rather than necessarily externally.
Yes. And look, I have experienced many times with yourself, with you, and with other people, because a lot of people come to Australia of all sorts of colours and backgrounds and cultures, and they think, especially if you have a different colour skin than white, they think it's because of my colour. Well, you have told me your story of how you got conned or how hard it was for you to find a job. You're white, you're blonde. Yeah. And you were a policewoman once upon a time, and you had all the privileges. Yet it didn't happen here. And I've met so many people who look very much like you, who tell this whole story. At the MBAN conference last year, a white man from South Africa who was a CEO, had a huge career behind him, came to Australia, had to start from the very bottom to grow. So it's a perception that it's our color, and that can be the reason why we stay behind. But I feel that sometimes it's a good reason to use it as an excuse. And I'm not saying that everyone likes our color. I have been assaulted so many times, even in Adelaide, getting on a tram or different places because of my color. That will happen no matter where in the world with the color thing. Having said that, you can't change those people, so let's forget them. Yeah. Because there's a whole bunch of people that will accept you no matter what, and will love what color you are because of who you are and what you bring. I think a lot of it is the fears that we let control us. And because we don't look at the fear, we don't want to look at the fear, we let other excuses. Oh, I would, but. I'm not saying it's easy. This is why I say, please take the risk, be courageous. The worst that's going to happen, you're going to get a no. So if you know what worst is, no one's going to kill you, I hope, by wanting to go there or wanting to try something. But if you don't do it, you won't know. You
could be pleasantly surprised.
And that's the thing. So if you already know what the worst possible case scenario can be, what do you have to lose? And that's what has always been the way I go. I think to myself, I'll know if they don't like me. I know if it's because of my experience or if it's because of something else, which could be woman, could be black woman, could be little woman, could be frizzy-haired woman, could be whatever it is they don't like. But at the end of the day, I might just get a yes, and that's why I never stopped. Because I know if I don't do it, I will never know, and then I will always regret that never knowing. That for me is, okay, perhaps that's the way my character is. Actually, I already know my profile is. I just,
you profiled yourself.
No, I don't profile myself. Someone profiled me, but I know that I'm like a bull in a china shop. I will go. I will just keep going until the wall is impenetrable. Then I'll see if I can go around the wall, up and down the wall, whatever way. But until I get that no, and I think it's important to look inside yourself and really, why are you afraid? No doesn't hurt. No doesn't kill. No is
a two-letter word.
A two-letter word.
Well, it's got such a big weight to it, hasn't it?
It does. But get used to it and say no to yourself a few times. And once you've heard it a few times, it has a sound to it. And remember, no is not the end of the road. No means there's another path somewhere else. You just got to find it. Or not yet. Not this way. So no means a whole bunch of things, but it's not no opportunity. It means other opportunities, just not this one. is another one. So it's a question of how you look at no.
Yeah.
And not fear no. Just look at it like, okay, it's a setback, but I have to find that yes elsewhere. End of story.
We have a really good saying that our no's are rocks. And we just need to sometimes go through quite a lot of rocks to get the diamond, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's a really good one. I like it because yes, you do have to.
Yeah.
Look. That's how gold diggers found their gold.
Yeah.
By digging through a whole bunch of rocks. But if you don't dig, you won't find it.
Yeah. And the reward can be great.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So, it sounds like you're going to be bringing a lot to your episodes. Will this just be Desiree, or will you be talking to other people about their experiences as well?
I'd like to bring some other people in because the world according to Desiree might not be that exciting, or might be some of it exciting, but I think it's better to not just hear it from me. I think it's good to hear others' perspectives, their journey, their trials and tribulations, their successes especially, and to see that they've, they're still here and they're still doing it and they're doing the do and that they're continuing there and they're taking the risk all the time and that the benefits are so great that it's worth it to go out there and do what they feel that they're supposed to be doing in the world. Yeah. And I've met so many people like that, and sometimes I feel, oh my God, these people, I'm so honored to be in their presence, because they didn't let no stop them. So that's really important.
And I'm sure I'm very honored to be in your presence as well. I know that no definitely doesn't stop you either.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. So Desiree, what significant lessons are you going to be bringing to the podcast?
Look, I am a lecturer, but it's not those kinds of lessons. I think life's lessons are the best, and what I'd like, even in my education, I didn't do it back to back. I drip fed myself the education as I was getting life's lessons, and I think the lessons I would like to bring to those podcasts is by listening to others and listening to the different episodes, etc., is to learn, get to know who you are and how people got to know who they are. And each person finds out who they are through different channels, different ways, different experiences. Get to know who you are, get to know your emotions, get to know how to regulate them, because I can tell you the person I am today and the person I was 30, 40 years ago, not the same. I would fly at the handle and destroy everything in my path because I had no regulations of my emotions, and I have had to eat a hell of a lot of humble pie to learn that this is not how to make friends. This is the best way of making enemies. And I didn't make enemies as such. I just didn't make any friends because I had no regulation whatsoever. So how to build confidence is the other thing that I want to help. I'd like to bring and all my lessons, because there's confidence, there's overconfidence, and I've learned how dangerous overconfidence can be, and how painful it can be for the self and for others, because overconfidence is not very humbling. So how to be confident and humble at the same time. So these are the lessons I've come to learn, my biggest lessons, and I hope that the various episodes will be able to share that.
It's interesting because it is a very, very fine line, confidence and overconfidence, and sometimes overconfidence can come across in so many other personality traits that, as you say, instantly, not necessarily makes enemies, but can just rub people up the wrong
That's
way.
it.
You know,
That's it.
you know, overconfidence can sometimes come across as arrogance, or
Yes.
you know, or you know, there's just all these little nuances.
Yes.
And it is a very, very fine line.
It is, and you can be confident and as nice as possible, and you can still be perceived as being arrogant or whatever it is you're perceived. But if you've done it in a respectful way, I think we can live with that. But overconfidence, look, I am a risk taker. I can deal with risk. I can deal with high risk for me. But now I do think about the consequences, not necessarily for me, but what's the consequence of that to others? And overconfidence is when you just think of you. And sometimes you have that life and you want to do it, but you have to also be ready to live with those consequences. But go through that process. And overconfidence can be painful and can hurt people in how we do it. So it is a fine line, and each person has to find that line for themselves and be able to deal with it. Yeah.
Which is definitely where that's coming through. Thank you so much, Desiree, for coming into the studio. It's great that we're learning a little bit more about you, your own experiences, what you're going to be bringing to your audiences. I think over the course of the episode seasons, we'll learn a lot more about you as well as from your guests as well. And it's great to see that you are
as much as I can. Yes. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you.
Or watching. Share this episode with someone who might appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. For more resources and training programs, visit my website, www.managetheconflict.com/home.